Man convicted of talking about his genitals at trial. Wife loses lawsuit after letter threatening husband's life was discovered. Man loses his trial when his lawyer inadvertently ratted on him. What's up, people? Today's question is, lawyers, has there ever been a time the opposing counsel accidentally proved your case for you, and what happened? Story 1. Not a lawyer, but was taken to court once. A guy had taken my family to court, basically because he had been dating my mother, and things ended. So he then takes us to small claims court with an itemized list of everything he'd ever bought for the entire family. Every cheeseburger, every kit, cat, he even billed for things he did, like house repairs. Some of the repairs were terrible and ruined other things. He tried to unclog the sink and ended up destroying the main drain pipe for the house. Now, he had bought some more expensive things as well. No one asked him to, but he was one of the types that loved to show how much money he had, would always talk about his connections, and would name drop someone anytime we went anywhere. So when he takes us to court with his full itemized list, the judge asks him to go first and present his testimony. He basically says, "While I was with them, I bought all this stuff. I took them to dinner all the time and all this, but it was the idea that it would be paid back by them." Judge, you bought a child a birthday cake with the idea it would be paid back? Did you ever say that these things were loans and not gifts? Him, well, no, but I shouldn't need to. That's the normal way people think. Judge, well, that's not the way I'd think. Case dismissed. Story 2. A guy I used to work with was going through a messy divorce, about 20 years ago now. His soon-to-be ex-wife was a psycho, and her father was a psychologist, so he was pulling all of the strings. I even had my coworker arrested at work one day. The divorce case took years, one young son involved, and at every turn, my friend lost because of something the father filed or another string he pulled. In the end, they were in court, and it was very apparent that my friend was going to lose custody and all visitation rights. Every plea he entered was squashed, and he was mentally broken. The judge asked the ex-wife if she had anything else to add, and she said she had a written statement that she wanted the judge to read. The bailiff took the paper from her and handed it to the judge, who unfolded the note and read it. He stopped for a minute and asked her if she was certain she wanted this note added to the case, and she said yes. The judge turned to my friend and said, paraphrasing, "Mr. X, all these years and all these claims that I ruled against you, the court profusely apologizes. I did not believe you, but now I do. Ruling in your favor," bangs the gavel, "I grant you full legal and physical custody of your minor child. Please handcuff Miss X." My buddy was stunned that he won, and happy at the same time. He later found out that the note said, "Give me my son, or I'll you." Story 3. I was interning at Legal Services, doing discovery work for family law. My supervisor invited us to observe a hearing for our client to get a restraining order against her husband. At the hearing, the client discussed various times he threatened her. The man, representing himself, interrupted and said, "Judge, I never said any of those things. If I had, she wouldn't be standing here." A restraining order was granted. Story 4. I am not a lawyer, but the opposing party made it easy for us. We were tubing down a small river in rural Ohio. We had only been in the river for a quarter mile when we got stopped by rangers doing checks on who knows what, probably for people drinking. They stop us, and after 30 minutes, they tell us that we have to leave the river and give us a ticket. When my dad asks why, they say it is because the boat that my 4-year-old brother is using is not licensed by the state and that it does not have the mandatory safety equipment on board. Life jackets, a med kit, and a fire extinguisher. I'm on mobile, so I can't post a link, but the boat is something you get from a Toys R Us for your pool. Long story short, my dad fights the ticket and, per their request, brings the boat to the courtroom. He said he walked in with the boat folded and tucked up under his arm. The judge asked, "Is this the boat in question?" My dad said, "Yes, Your Honor. If you give me 5 minutes, I could blow it up for you." He also went on to say that if the safety equipment was in the boat, it would sink. He won right then. The court costs were as much as just paying the ticket, but it's the little things. Story 5. When I first started practicing, I handled a custody case where my client, mom, had a problem with dad smoking around the kids. I asked him if he regularly smoked around the kids, to which he replied that he doesn't smoke tobacco, only weed in the house. Obviously, this raised eyebrows, as it is illegal in my state. He then went into a long diatribe about how he only follows the law of the streets. He actually said this, and doesn't recognize the authority of the court he was currently in front of. Needless to say, mom got full custody, especially after dad was arrested for going to the court services officer's house late at night and trying to kick her door in. Story 6. Not my case, but I was in the courtroom watching a trial. Pro se defendant who was accused of flashing a guard and until, well, you know. As a pro se defendant, he defended himself at trial without an attorney. The prosecutor was doing well, proving the case. When the female deputy was on the stand, the defendant asked her one question. If you saw me do what you claim I did, then how big is my d-? The deputy responded by raising her hands and estimating about 15 inches. The guy grinned, turned to the jury, nodded, said, "Yeah, that's right," and sat down. Obviously, he was convicted. He was serving a 10-year prison sentence, so this conviction wasn't of much consequence, but I'll never forget it. Story 7. Ooh, I've got one. I was about 5 when this happened, but my parents explained it years later. There were a series of trees on the sidewalk in front of each house on the street. Although they were not part of our yard, the tree was owned by my parents and they were responsible for it. Some guy tripped over a branch and was seriously injured. He came after my parents for all of the money. The dude showed up with a mountain of evidence. Hospital bills, psychologist testimonials, a photo montage of his slow and painful recovery, etc. Apparently, his lawyer brandished this stuff like a bat before court. My parents' lawyer thought he had a good case, until the first day of court, when he walked over with a picture and asked, "Is this your tree?" My parents looked at the photo in disbelief. "No, that's actually not our tree." The opposing counsel repeated the question. It went back and forth a few times until my parents' lawyer incredulously produced a picture of their tree, which was, even to the untrained eye, a completely different tree. At that point, the opposing counsel whirled around and started screaming at his client, "You said that was their tree." The case is summarily dismissed. My parents walked out in shock, came home, and bought me ice cream. All's well that ends well. Story 8. Plaintiff was claiming insurance money because he accidentally chopped off his fingers while cutting bamboo with a machete, and the insurance company, our client, refused to pay the insured amount. During the hearing, the plaintiff attorney began to demonstrate with a rolled-up sheet of paper how his client was cutting the bamboo when the accident happened. No matter how he tried, he could not reproduce the position of the fingers with the alleged cut of the machete. The only possible match would be if the plaintiff had deliberately extended his fingers over a plane surface and hacked his own fingers. Based on this disastrous performance, the judge determined an expert opinion and later dismissed the case due to deliberate self-mutilation. Well people, so much for today's last story. Remember that you can write me some of your funniest stories in the comments. I'm collecting the best ones to make a video with your best stories.